The metal floor of the Draxian command ship was cold beneath Lyra's knees. Her silver feathers trembled as heavy footsteps approached. She kept her eyes down, just as she'd been taught. Looking at your captors was dangerous. Looking at them got you hit. This one, the warlord Veldar announced, his clawed hand gripping her shoulder roughly. Your reward for the ground assault, human. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd heard stories about humans during her 3 weeks in captivity. Terrifying stories. The Draxians spoke of them like they were monsters wrapped in skin. Creatures who could run for days without stopping. Who healed from wounds that would kill other species. Who fought with a savagery that even impressed the brutal Draxian warriors. She dared a glance upward. The human stood with his arms crossed, face unreadable. He was tall, wearing a worn jacket covered in scorch marks. His dark hair was messy, and there was a fresh cut above his left eye. Captain Jake Morrison, they'd called him. The mercenary who'd broken through the Kshari defensive line in just 2 hours. She's pretty, isn't she? Veldar continued, shaking Lyra slightly. The Kshari are weak little birds, but they make good servants. This one was some kind of artist back on her world. Useless skill now, but she'll look nice in your quarters. Other Draxian officers laughed. Lyra felt bile rise in her throat. Her hands were bound with energy cuffs that burned if she moved too much. Her wings ached from being folded tight for so long. Jake's expression didn't change. Right. Take her, Veldar pushed Lyra forward. She stumbled, barely catching herself. Break her in however you like. They are fragile, so be careful if you want her to last. Or don't. We have plenty more where she came from. More laughter. Lyra's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of them. Jake stepped forward and took her arm. His grip was firm but not painful. Come on, he said quietly. They walked through the corridors of the Draxian ship in silence. Lyra focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Her legs felt like water. Every few steps, she'd catch glimpses of other prisoners being led away, other prizes being distributed. A young Vorten male. 2 Sailkari females clutching each other. All wearing the same expression of numb terror. Jake's ship was docked in Bay 7. It was smaller than she expected, scarred with battle damage but somehow cleaner than the Draxian vessels. The airlock hissed shut behind them, and Lyra flinched at the sound. Hold still, Jake said. He pulled out a small tool and carefully deactivated her energy cuffs. They clattered to the floor. Lyra rubbed her wrists, confused. Was this a trick? Some kind of game before the real punishment began? You hungry? Jake asked, heading toward what looked like a galley. She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Her throat was too tight. He rummaged through storage containers, pulling out various packages. I've got some fruit rations here. Universal nutritional paste, though that stuff tastes like dirt. Oh, here. He held up a sealed package. Kshari grain mix. Picked it up at a station a few months back. Never know when it'll come in handy. Lyra stared at him. This had to be a test. If she reached for the food, he'd snatch it away. Laugh at her. That's what the Draxians did. Jake seemed to notice her hesitation. He set the package on the counter between them and stepped back. It's yours if you want it. No tricks. Long seconds passed. Finally, hunger won over fear. Lyra slowly reached for the package, ready to pull back at any sign of violence. Jake just watched calmly. She tore it open and ate quickly, barely tasting it. When she finished, Jake gestured down a corridor. That room there is yours. Door locks from the inside. I've got the crew quarters on the opposite end. Bathroom's the second door on the left. There's clothes in the storage locker that might fit. Lyra followed his pointing, still waiting for the trap to spring. Look, Jake said, his voice softer now. I don't know what you've been told about humans. Or what you've been through these past weeks. But you're safe here. You're not a prize. You're not property. You're a person, and while you're on this ship, you'll be treated like one. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Jake looked tired suddenly. Old beyond his years. Because it's the right thing to do. And because I'm done pretending it isn't. He turned and walked away, leaving Lyra standing alone in the corridor. She waited for him to come back. For the kindness to reveal itself as cruelty. But he didn't return. The ship hummed quietly around her. Somewhere, an engine cycled down. Slowly, carefully, Lyra walked to the room he'd indicated. It was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a viewport showing the stars. She touched the door panel, and it slid shut. Then she pressed the lock. It engaged with a soft click. For the first time in 3 weeks, she was alone. Behind a locked door. Safe. Lyra collapsed onto the bed and finally let herself cry. The first morning, Lyra woke up convinced it had all been a dream. Or worse, a setup. She stayed in her room for hours, listening to the ship's sounds, waiting for someone to bang on her door. But nobody came. Around midday, there was a gentle knock. She froze. Lyra? Jake's voice came through the door. I'm leaving some food out here. No pressure. Whenever you're ready. She heard his footsteps retreat. After waiting several minutes, she cracked the door open. A tray sat on the floor with more grain mix, some kind of fruit she recognized from home, and a container of water. Steam rose from a small cup. Hot tea. Shari tea. Her hands shook as she brought the tray inside. How did he know? How did he get this? 3 days passed like this. Jake would knock, leave food, and disappear. He never demanded anything. Never tried to force the door. Lyra started venturing out when she thought the corridors were empty, exploring the small ship. It was just Jake and 3 crew members. A pilot named Troy who nodded politely when he saw her. An engineer called Reeves who smiled but kept his distance. And a young woman named Beth who worked communications. On the 4th day, Lyra found Jake in the galley making coffee. She hesitated in the doorway, ready to bolt. Morning, he said without turning around. Want some breakfast? Why do you have Kshari tea? She asked quietly. Jake glanced over his shoulder. Trade routes. I pick up supplies from different worlds. Never know who you might need to help. He paused. Coffee's terrible for your species, right? Something about your metabolism? She nodded slowly. He'd researched Kshari biology. Why would he do that unless he actually cared? Can I ask you something? Lyra moved a little closer. Sure. What's your plan? With me, I mean. Jake poured his coffee and turned to face her properly. No plan. My contract with the Draxians ends in 2 weeks. After that, I'm cutting ties with them completely. You can stay on the ship, or I can drop you somewhere safe. Your choice. Just like that. Just like that. He took a sip of his coffee. I'm not going to lie to you, Lyra. I've done things for the Draxians that keep me up at night. I needed the money. This ship, it was my father's. When he died, I inherited it along with all his debts. The Draxians paid well, so I took their contracts. But there's a line, you know? And they crossed it. Lyra sat down at the small table. This was the most she'd spoken to anyone in weeks. What line? You, Jake said simply. Giving people as prizes. I knew they were brutal, but that. He shook his head. I'm done. Even if it means starting from scratch. Over the next week, something strange happened. Lyra began to relax. Jake would ask about her homeworld, and actually listen when she talked about the crystal forests and the singing temples. He showed her how the ship's systems worked, pointing out the schedule for weapons drills so the noise wouldn't startle her anymore. I used to be a medic, Jake told her one evening as they ate dinner in the galley. Beth and Troy were there too, playing some kind of card game. Before all this. Worked on a colony ship. What happened? Lyra asked. Corporate war. The colony got caught in the middle. My wife and daughter were there. His voice went flat. I was on a supply run. By the time I got back, there was nothing left. Lyra felt her heart clench. I'm sorry. Me too. Jake pushed his food around his plate. After that, I just wanted to forget. The Draxians offered me work that kept me too busy to think. Kept me too angry to feel. But anger's a lousy compass. It'll point you anywhere as long as it's the wrong direction. Beth looked up from her cards. Captain's being philosophical again. Somebody's got to be, Troy grinned. The lightness between them surprised Lyra. They genuinely liked each other. This wasn't a crew held together by fear or strict hierarchy. They stayed because they wanted to. The turning point came on day 9. A Draxian liaison officer named Krell came aboard to discuss the final contract details. He spotted Lyra in the corridor and smiled in a way that made his skin crawl. The little bird is looking healthier, Krell said, reaching out to touch her feathers. Lyra jerked back, but Krell grabbed her arm. Still skittish. You need to train her better, Morrison. They respond well to discipline. Jake appeared so fast Lyra barely saw him move. One moment Krell was holding her arm. The next, he was slammed against the wall with Jake's forearm across his throat. Get off my ship. Jake's voice was ice cold. I was just... Now. Krell scrambled away, gasping. Jake watched until the Draxian was through the airlock, then turned to Lyra. His expression immediately softened. You okay? She nodded, unable to speak. Her arm didn't even hurt where Krell had grabbed her, but she was shaking anyway. Come on, Jake said gently. Let's get you some tea. That night, Lyra lay in her bed staring at the ceiling. For weeks she'd been a thing. An object to be traded and used. But Jake treated her like she mattered. Like her comfort and safety were important. Like she was worth protecting. It was such a small thing, really. Basic decency. But after everything she'd been through, it felt like a miracle. She heard Jake moving around in the galley, probably unable to sleep. Making another pot of coffee he didn't need. Lyra smiled slightly in the darkness. Tomorrow, she decided, she'd ask him to teach her about Earth. About what made humans capable of such cruelty and such kindness in equal measure. For the first time since her capture, she wanted to know about tomorrow. The message came through at 0600 hours. Lyra was helping Reeves clean the air filtration system when the ship's alarm chirped. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Jake's voice crackled over the intercom. All hands to stations. We've got incoming orders. Lyra followed Reeves to the bridge. Troy was already at the pilot's console, and Beth sat at communications looking worried. Jake stood in the center, staring at a holographic display showing coordinates and tactical information. What is it? Troy asked. Jake's jaw was tight. Final contract. Veldar wants us to hit a Kshari settlement. Grid coordinates 447b. Lyra felt her blood turn cold. That's a civilian zone. There are no military targets there. I know, Jake said quietly. Beth pulled up more information. They're saying it's harboring rebels. Orders are to do a full orbital bombardment. Scorched Earth protocol. That means everyone, Lyra whispered. Women. Children. The elderly. That settlement has over 3,000 people. Jake kept staring at the display. His hands were clenched into fists. Nobody spoke. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the engines. Finally, Jake reached out and closed the tactical display. No. What? Troy looked up sharply. No. We're not doing it. Jake's voice was steady. Send a message back to Veldar. Tell him the contract's void. Beth's fingers hesitated over her console. Captain, they won't accept that. You signed a binding agreement. I don't care what I signed. I'm not killing 3,000 civilians because some warlord thinks they might be helping rebels. Reeves stepped forward. Jake, they'll come after us. You know they will. The Draxians don't accept refusals. Then they come after us, Jake said. I've spent 2 years doing their dirty work. I've looked the other way too many times. But this? He shook his head. This is where it ends. Lyra felt something break open in her chest. He was going to lose everything. His ship, his freedom, maybe his life. For people he'd never met. For her people. Beth sent the message. They waited. 3 minutes passed. 5. Then the communications console lit up like a fireworks display. Incoming transmission, Beth said. It's Veldar. And he sounds angry. Jake nodded. Put him through. The warlord's face appeared on the main screen. His scales were dark with rage. You dare refuse me, human? After everything I've paid you? The contract's done, Veldar. We're square. I've completed every mission you gave me up until now. This one's a bridge too far. You don't get to decide that. Veldar roared. You'll do as you're told, or I'll board your pathetic little ship and take it piece by piece. Starting with that little Kshari pet you're so fond of. Jake's expression turned to stone. You can try. I'm not trying anything. I have 5 warships in your sector. You have nowhere to run. Veldar leaned closer to his screen. You have 1 hour to change your mind, Morrison. After that, I'm coming for you. And trust me, you'll wish you'd just followed orders. The transmission cut off. Alarms immediately started blaring as sensors picked up incoming Draxian vessels. Troy pulled up the tactical display. 5 ships, just like Veldar said. All of them bigger and better armed than Jake's small transport. We need to jump, Troy said urgently. Now, while we still can. Can't, Reeves called from the engineering station. Jump drive needs another 20 minutes to charge. We used it yesterday for that supply run. Then we stall, Jake said. Beth looked up from her console. How? They're not exactly the negotiating type. Jake didn't answer. He was calculating something, staring at the sensor readouts. Lyra knew that look. He was planning something desperate. We could give them false coordinates, Troy suggested. Buy some time. They'd verify before committing forces, Beth said. We'd get maybe 5 extra minutes. Lyra's mind raced. 5 minutes wasn't enough. 20 minutes was impossible. The Draxians would be in firing range in 10. Unless something distracted them. Unless they thought they were getting what they wanted. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lyra moved to the communications console. I have an idea. Lyra, no, Jake started to say. Trust me. She activated the fleet-wide channel. Every Draxian ship in the sector would hear this. Veldar, this is Lyra of the Kshari. You want the rebels? I know where they are. Jake's eyes went wide. What are you doing? The settlement at 447B is a decoy, Lyra continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The real rebel base is at these coordinates. She started listing random grid references, pulling them from memory of her homeworld's geography. Places that sounded real but would take time to verify. There are weapons caches at Grid 229C, command centers at 445A and 667F, supply depots scattered across the northern continent. Veldar's face reappeared on screen. And why would you betray your own people, little bird? Lyra met his gaze directly for the first time. Because if you're chasing them, you're not bombing 3,000 innocent people. And because I'm tired of watching monsters win. For a moment, Veldar just stared at her. Then he laughed. You think I'm stupid? Those coordinates are useless. Then verify them, Lyra shot back. Send scouts. Check your intelligence. But while you're deciding whether I'm lying, my people are evacuating the real targets. Every second you waste talking to me is another second they have to run. It was a bluff. A complete bluff. But Lyra delivered it like it was gospel truth. Veldar's expression darkened. If you're lying. Jump drives charged. Reeves shouted. Go. Jake ordered. Troy's hands flew across the controls. The ship lurched violently as they entered hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines, and the Draxian fleet disappeared from sensors. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Beth let out a shaky laugh. That was insane. Jake turned to Lyra, his expression unreadable. You just made yourself a target. Veldar won't forget that. Good, Lyra said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. Let him remember that one Kshari stood up to him. Let him remember that you were willing to lose everything rather than murder my people. Why did you do it? Jake asked quietly. Lyra thought about the past 2 weeks. The tea left outside her door. The locked room he gave her. The way he'd thrown Krell against the wall for touching her. Small kindnesses that had slowly rebuilt something inside her she thought was broken forever. Because you showed me that not everyone in the universe is cruel, she said. Because you treated me like I mattered when I was told I was nothing. Because someone had to stand with you, and I'm tired of being afraid. The bridge was silent. Then Troy cleared his throat. So, where exactly are we jumping to? Anywhere but here, Jake said. Reeves, check for damage. Beth, start looking for a safe port. Somewhere the Draxians don't have influence. As the crew scattered to their tasks, Jake caught Lyra's eye. He didn't say anything, but she saw something there. Respect. Gratitude. Maybe even the beginning of friendship. They were outlaws now. Hunted. But somehow, that felt more honest than anything Lyra had experienced in months. The neutral station called Haven's Rest looked like it had seen better days. Rust covered half the docking ports, and the main tower flickered with failing lights. But it was outside Draxian space, and right now that was all that mattered. Jake's ship limped into dock with one engine sputtering and hull panels scorched black from near misses. The escape had cost them. Badly. Damage report, Jake said as they powered down. Reeves pulled up his tablet, scrolling through red warning indicators. Port engines shot. Shield generators are fried. We've got hull breaches on decks 2 and 3, nothing critical but they need patching. And the jump drive won't make another long-distance leap without a complete overhaul. He paused. We're looking at 60,000 credits minimum. Maybe more. Jake sat back in his chair and rubbed his face. How much do we have? Beth checked the accounts. 18,000. That's everything. The Draxians froze your contract payment when you refused the mission. Of course they did. Jake stood up slowly. Okay. Sell whatever we can spare. Parts, supplies, Personal gear. See what that gets us. Over the next 3 days, they worked non-stop. Troy sold his collection of old Earth music. Beth traded her backup communications equipment. Reeves parted with tools he'd owned for 15 years. Jake sold his father's old service medals, something Lyra knew hurt him deeply though he didn't show it. Lyra wanted to help but had nothing to offer. Everything she'd owned had been taken when the Draxians captured her world. She felt useless watching everyone sacrifice. On the 4th day, while Jake was negotiating with a parts dealer in the station's market, Lyra explored the common areas. That's when she saw it. A posting on a digital board. Maintenance work is needed. Must be able to work in confined spaces. Good pay. Her heart jumped. Kshari was small, flexible. Their hollow bones and lightweight frames made them perfect for tight maintenance work. She copied the contact information and applied immediately. When Jake found out, he wasn't happy. "You don't have to do this," he said as they stood in the ship's cargo bay. "We'll figure something out." "You've been figuring things out for me since I came aboard," Lyra replied. "Let me help. I want to contribute, not just be a passenger. You saved all of us with that stunt you pulled with Velvar. That's contribution enough. That was survival. This is different." Lyra crossed her arms. "Jake, you gave up everything. Your income, your safety, your reputation. The least I can do is help pay for repairs." He studied her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Okay. But if anything feels wrong, if anyone treats you badly, you tell me. Deal?" "Deal." The maintenance work was hard but honest. Lyra spent her days crawling through ventilation systems and behind wall panels, fixing wiring and clearing blockages. The station supervisor was a gruff alien named Court who didn't care about species or background, only whether you did the job right. She was good at it. Better than good. Her small hands could reach places others couldn't. Within a week, Court was requesting her specifically for the difficult jobs. Meanwhile, Jake was making changes to how the crew operated. One evening, he called everyone together in the galley. "I've been thinking about our next move," he said. "We can't go back to military contracts. The Draxians have blacklisted us with half the mercenary guilds in the sector. But we don't need to do that kind of work anyway." "What are you suggesting?" Troy asked. "Escort missions. Refugee transport. Rescue operations. Defensive contracts only." Jake looked at each of them. "No more morally gray work. No more looking the other way. We do things right, or we don't do them at all." Beth frowned. "That pays less. A lot less." "I know. But we'll sleep better." Jake leaned against the counter. "Look, I'm not going to force anyone to stay. If you want out, I understand. I'll pay what I owe you from the repair money." Nobody moved. Then Reeves spoke up. "I'm in. Been wanting to do something that matters for a while now." "Same," Troy said. "Though I'm voting we upgrade weapons if we're going into dangerous areas to rescue people." Beth shrugged. "My family always said I was too idealistic anyway. Might as well prove them right." Jake smiled, really smiled. It was the first time Lyra had seen him look genuinely happy. Word started spreading through Haven's Rest about the human captain who defied the Draxians. At first, Lyra thought it would make them targets. But something unexpected happened instead. A Kshari family approached them in the market. The mother was crying. "Please, our daughter is still on Kshar Prime. The Draxians took over last month. We escaped but she was away visiting relatives. Can you help?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Give me the details." They ran the rescue mission with careful planning. In and out, no shots fired, one young Kshari girl reunited with her family. The parents paid them half what Jake asked for, all they could afford. It barely covered fuel costs. But the mother hugged Lyra before they left. "Thank you. Thank you for showing us there's still good in the galaxy." More Kshari started coming. Then other species. Refugees fleeing Draxian expansion, families separated by war, workers trapped in bad contracts. Jake's ship became an unofficial refugee transport. The cargo bay was converted to temporary living space. Lyra found herself acting as a translator and mediator between the rescued aliens and the crew. She'd always been good with languages, and now that skill actually mattered. One night, after delivering 15 refugees to safety, Lyra found Jake sitting alone in the galley staring at a cup of cold coffee. "You okay?" she asked. "Just thinking. A month ago, I was helping the Draxians conquer systems. Now I'm helping people escape them." He shook his head. Funny how things change. Lyra sat across from him. You know the Draxians have put a bounty on you. 50,000 credits. I know. And you know eventually they'll find us. I know that too. Jake finally looked at her. Does that scare you? Terrifies me, Lyra admitted. But I'd rather be scared and free than safe and owned. You taught me that. I didn't teach you anything. You were always strong. You just needed a chance to remember it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The ship hummed around them, filled with people sleeping peacefully because two humans and a Kshari woman had decided to care. Outside the viewport, stars drifted by. Somewhere out there, the Draxians were hunting them. But for tonight, they were safe. They were doing good work. And somehow, that was enough. Beth's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, we've got incoming traffic. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Reading them as Kshari design. Jake and Lyra exchanged glances. They rushed to the bridge. The ships weren't attacking. They were hailing. Beth put them through. A Kshari male appeared on screen, older, with distinguished gray feathers. Captain Morrison. My name is Commander Thalen of the Kshari Resistance. We need to talk. Commander Thalen's message was simple and urgent. The Kshari Resistance wanted to meet Jake in person at a colony world called Viridian 4. They had a proposal that could help both sides. Jake was suspicious. How do I know this isn't a Draxian trap? Because Veldar wants you dead, not negotiating, Thalen replied. And because Lyra's transmission bought us time to evacuate 2 settlements before the Draxians could verify her false coordinates. You've earned trust among my people. They agreed to meet. The journey to Viridian 4 took 3 days. Lyra spent most of that time nervous. She'd never met the Resistance before. Part of her wondered if they'd blame her for getting captured in the first place. Viridian 4 was a green world with thick forests and crystal-clear rivers. The Resistance base was hidden underground, camouflaged so well that Troy almost flew past it twice. When they landed, 30 Kshari soldiers stood waiting, weapons ready but not aimed. Thalen greeted them personally. He was older than Lyra expected, with scars crossing his wings and a commanding presence. Captain Morrison. Thank you for coming. Let's hear what you've got to say, Jake replied. They were led into a conference room carved from stone. Maps covered the walls showing Draxian positions and Kshari territories. Thalen got straight to business. We've been fighting the Draxians for 7 years. We're outgunned, outnumbered, and running out of time. But we're not without resources. What we lack is expertise. He looked directly at Jake. Human military tactics are legendary. Unconventional, adaptive, effective. We want to hire you to train our forces and help coordinate refugee evacuations. I'm not a general, Jake said. I'm a transport captain with a broken-down ship. You're a combat medic who became a successful mercenary. You understand both survival and strategy. That's exactly what we need. Thalen pulled up a contract on a datapad. Full pay, proper rates. Supplies for your ship. Protection for your crew. And a chance to actually fight back instead of just running. Jake read through the terms carefully. Beth and Troy leaned over his shoulder. The money was good. Not Draxian money, but honest pay for honest work. More importantly, it was a real purpose. I need to talk to my crew, Jake said. They stepped outside. Beth spoke first. The pay's fair. And would actually be making a difference. It's dangerous though, Reeves pointed out. The Draxians will hunt us even harder if we're actively helping the Resistance. They're already hunting us, Troy said. Might as well make it count. Jake turned to Lyra. What do you think? She hadn't expected him to ask. My opinion matters. Of course it does. This is your people we're talking about. Your war. Lyra looked back at the underground base. Kshari soldiers were training in a courtyard, practicing maneuvers. Children played near the barracks, refugees who'd found safety here. They reminded her of the people Jake had been rescuing these past weeks. I think we should do it, she said quietly. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not asking you to fight my war. You've already done more for me than anyone had a right to expect. Jake smiled slightly. Lyra, the moment I refused to bomb that settlement, it became my war too. Sometimes you don't choose your battles. They choose you. They took the contract. The next 2 months were intense. Jake trained resistance fighters in guerrilla tactics and emergency medicine. Troy taught pilots evasive maneuvers. Reeves helped upgrade their outdated ships. Beth set up secure communication networks. Lyra worked as a liaison, helping refugees adjust and translating between species. More and more aliens were fleeing Draxian territory, not just Kshari. The resistance was becoming something bigger than one species' fight for freedom. Then the Draxians found them. The attack came at dawn. Sensors picked up a massive fleet dropping out of hyperspace. 15 warships, led by Velthar's flagship. They tracked Jake's ship somehow, probably through contacts on Haven's Rest. "This is it," Thalen said grimly as alarms blared throughout the base. "They're demanding we surrender you, Captain. Said if we hand you over, they'll spare the colony." Jake's jaw tightened. "Don't even think about it." "I wasn't planning to." Thalen activated the base-wide communication. "All fighters to positions. Evacuate non-combatants to the southern tunnels. This is not a drill." Jake turned to his crew. "Get to the ship. If this goes bad, I want you out of here." "Not a chance," Beth said firmly. Troy and Reeves nodded agreement. The battle started badly. The Draxian ships had overwhelming firepower. Resistance fighters launched in their patched-together vessels, brave but outmatched. Lyra watched from the command center as ships exploded on the tactical display, each one representing lives lost. Then something unexpected happened. More ships appeared on sensors. Dozens of them, jumping in from multiple vectors. Kshari vessels, yes, but also others. Species that the Draxians had conquered or threatened. They'd heard about the human captain fighting back and decided to join. "This is Captain Morrison's doing," one transmission said. "He showed us resistance was possible. Time to return the favor." The tide turned. It wasn't just about firepower anymore. It was about will. About people who were tired of running, tired of being afraid. The combined fleet hit the Draxians from all sides, using tactics Jake had taught them. Velthar's flagship took heavy damage. His face appeared on the main screen, furious and desperate. "Morrison. Face me like a warrior." "I'm not a warrior," Jake replied calmly. "I'm just someone who got tired of watching bullies win." The flagship's engines exploded. Escape pods launched as the great ship began breaking apart. The remaining Draxian vessels retreated, their formation shattered. When it was over, the command center erupted in cheers. Lyra found herself crying, overwhelmed by relief and exhaustion. They'd won. Actually won. In the days following the battle, resistance leaders from multiple species arrived. They wanted to formalize an alliance, create something more permanent. Thalen offered Jake a permanent position as military advisor. "You could have real influence here," Thalen said. "Help shape how we fight back." Jake considered it. Then he looked at Lyra. "What do you think?" She'd been quiet since the battle, thinking about everything that had happened. From being a prize to being a refugee to being part of something meaningful. "I need to ask you something first," Lyra said. They walked outside, away from the celebrating crowds. The twin moons of Viridian 4 cast silver light across the forest. "Jake, why did you really refuse that first order? The settlement bombing. You could have done it, taken the payment, and walked away rich. Why didn't you?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because I looked at those coordinates and thought about my daughter. Thought about how she'd have been playing in some settlement just like that when the bombs fell on her colony. And I realized if I killed those people, I'd become the same as the ones who killed her. I'd spent 2 years running from that pain, but you can't outrun yourself." "And me?" Lyra asked softly. "Why treat me differently than the Draxians expected?" "Because you deserved better. Because everyone does." Jake met her eyes. "You were never a prize, Lyra. You were a person who'd been hurt, and the only decent thing to do was try to help you heal." Lyra felt her heart swell. "I was given to you as a war prize. Some worthless trophy. But you treated me like a queen. Not because you saw me as valuable property, but because you saw me as someone with value. There's a difference." "There is," Jake agreed. "I want to stay," Lyra said. "Not as a passenger or a refugee. As your partner. In this work. In building something better. If you'll have me." Jake smiled, genuine and warm. "I'd be honored." Behind them, celebrations continued. Ships launched into the night sky, carrying news of the victory to other systems. The Draxian Empire would strike back eventually. This war was far from over. But tonight, in a forest on a distant world, 2 people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances stood together looking at the stars. One human who'd learned that redemption came from doing right even when it cost everything. One Kshari who'd learned that strength meant choosing dignity over survival. They'd been broken by war and remade by kindness. And together, they'd help remake a galaxy that desperately needed to remember what decency looked like. The ship hummed in the distance, ready for whatever came next. Jake's crew was already planning their next mission. Refugees needed transport. Systems needed defending. There was work to do. Lyra took Jake's hand. He squeezed gently in return. "You know," he said quietly, "when this all started, I thought I was just trying to do one right thing. Make up for years of looking the other way. And now I think maybe one right thing leads to another. And maybe that's how you change the universe. One choice at a time." They stood together under alien stars, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. Two souls who'd found purpose in each other's courage. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. But somewhere in that darkness, there was light. And they'd keep fighting to make sure it spread. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.